Okay, so I've started recording. Okay, so is there anything that you want to be clarified, if any? If you have some issue or anything, just anything on the things we talked about in the last meeting. Okay, so I can guess we are okay with the last session. All right, so we are starting about 4 minutes before time, but we are all set. So I think there will be no need to wait further. We can start. Today we'll be looking at some of the basic things about the GlobalGAP compliance requirement. So we are not going to go into details about the compliance requirements themselves, but we are just going to have an overview, an introduction to what GlobalGAP compliance requirements are. So when they say GlobalGAP compliance requirements, what are they? That is the question we are going to seek to answer today. Our objectives for the day. So by the time we finish with today's session, you should be able to explain the scope of GlobalGAP certification. Every certification has its scope, what the certification covers and what it does not cover. So by the time we finish with today's session, you should be able to explain the scope of GlobalGAP certification, what it covers, what it doesn't cover. You should be able to mention the GlobalGAP normative document. So you know that certain documents are normative when we are talking about GlobalGAP. So you should be able to know those normative documents. You should be able also to distinguish between GlobalGAP general regulations and GlobalGAP control points and compliance criteria. So when they say GlobalGAP regulation, you should be able to tell that it is different from the control point, or not necessarily different, but you can state some characteristics of the general regulations and some characteristics of the control points and compliance criteria. And then finally, you should understand how the checklist is organized. I know by now you have had the opportunity to look at the checklist, but we will still look at the organization just in case there are some things that need clarity. Okay, so that will be our objectives for the day. So let's quickly start and look at the scope of GlobalGAP certification. So GlobalGAP, just like any certification scheme, has its scope. There are things that the certification covers, and there are things that the certification does not cover. So for GlobalGAP, GlobalGAP only takes care of the controlled production process of primary products. Okay, so it means that when you are doing production of primary product, and that production can be controlled. So it means GlobalGAP does not cover wild collection. Okay, so if you go to the forest or the bush and you go and collect seeds, or you go and collect fruit from the bush, that production is not under control. So GlobalGAP does not cover it. So GlobalGAP covers only production that are under control, which can be planned and which are managed and supervised. So any other production which is not under control is not covered by GlobalGAP. Okay. I can see, Praise, do you have any question?
No, let's go ahead, please.
Okay. Then GlobalGAP also has a product list. Okay, so your products must be on the product list. And the product list is published on the GlobalGAP website, is in the document. So when you go to the document section of the GlobalGAP website, you can download the product list to check whether your product is part of it or not. So there is a tall list of product list. So if somebody is not sure whether their product is covered by GlobalGAP certification or not, the person or the company must visit the site and get the product list and check. And GlobalGAP certifies only products that are produced by the producer themselves or the producers themselves. So if you are going to seek GlobalGAP certification, whatever certification you are going to seek for must be produced by yourself. So GlobalGAP does not cover middlemen, okay, because middlemen usually don't produce by themselves. So GlobalGAP does not certify middlemen or middle dealers. So every product that is to be certified by GlobalGAP must be produced by the producers themselves. So this 3 points gives us the scope of GlobalGAP certification. First, it covers production that is controlled, and it's only for primary product. So it doesn't cover juice and other things that are processed. It covers only primary product, which are produced under control, not wild collection. And then whatever product you are seeking to certify must also be part of the product list. The product list is on the document center of the GlobalGAP website. So you can go there and search for it and check. And then whatever product that is being certified must be produced by the producers themselves. So GlobalGAP does not certify somebody who goes for somebody's produce and sells. So in this case, we are talking about middlemen and all of that. So this is the scope of GlobalGAP certification. Any question at this point or anything to clarify at this point? Okay, we will proceed. Now, let's look at the normative document. When we say normative document in GlobalGAP, we are talking about the primary document which establishes the processes and procedures for GlobalGAP scheme, for the GlobalGAP scheme. Okay, so these are the normative documents. All the documents which have been established by GlobalGAP as essential for the management of the GlobalGAP certification scheme is termed as normative document. So there are about 8 things, or let's say 8 categories of normative documents, which every company that is seeking certification must be aware of. And the ones that concerns them, they must know. So let's look at them. The first normative document is the GlobalGAP sub-license and certification agreement. So this sub-license and certification agreement is the agreement that you, the company, will sign with your certification body. Without this agreement, you cannot get your GlobalGAP certification. It is an important normative document. So once you contact your certification body and you meet all their requirements, the first thing they will do before they will even set a date with you will be to let you sign the sub-license agreement. Then there is another sub-license agreement which doesn't concern you, the producer, but this is an agreement between the certification body and GlobalGAP. So the certification body also have a separate agreement with GlobalGAP, and that agreement is also considered a normative document. Then the GlobalGAP control point and compliance criteria. So this is the document which sets the compliance requirements for producers, and it is considered a normative document. And later on, we will look at in details this control point and compliance criteria document. Then the next normative document is the GlobalGAP checklist. So this is the checklist which is to be used by the auditors as well as to be used by the producer for their internal self-assessment. So this checklist consists of the control point and compliance criteria, and then there is also another checklist for small order producers, that is those who are doing option 2. I believe by now when I say option 2, we understand what I mean. So those doing option 2, they have an additional checklist on quality management system. Okay, but once your company is going for option 1, you are not required to use the QMS checklist. Okay, so these documents or this checklist, they can be customized. So the certification body or GlobalGAP can customize this checklist, but these are verbatim requirements, verbatim content, which are used for all audits, inspection, and also your self-assessment. So you see verbatim the things that you are supposed to do to be certified. Okay, so the checklist and all forms of checklist are also important normative documents. Then the next normative document is the National Interpretation Guidelines. So GlobalGAP has worked with national bodies at country level to develop national interpretation guidelines on the standards. So many countries now have it. So Ghana, for example, we have a national interpretation guideline. So if a company in Ghana wants to go and do GlobalGAP certification, they are going to fall on the national interpretation guidelines where GlobalGAP has provided interpretation to the requirement in context of Ghana. So things that can be done given the situation of Ghana have been taken care of in the national interpretation guidelines. So a company in Ghana may decide not to use the standard, the general standard, but they can use only the one that have been accepted in the national interpretation guidelines. So that is also a normative document. I understand Nigeria is currently working with GlobalGAP to come up with a national interpretation guidelines. So hopefully very soon, Nigeria will also have a national interpretation guideline. And once you have it, that becomes a normative document for companies in Nigeria. Then we also have the GlobalGAP general regulations. So the general regulations defines how the certification process works. And it also defines the requirements for quality management systems as far as the option 2 certification is concerned. So the way the certification process must work, both between the certification body and the producer, and all aspects of the certification process have been defined in the general regulations. There are actually 2 general regulations. We have general regulations part 1 and general regulations part 2. And some of these parts have some annexes. So we will look at those ones when we get to the general regulation aspect of the training. The GlobalGAP also has specific rules which define the certification process for specific scope. So if you take, for example, a company like LATC that is doing vegetables. Oh, praise, we've lost the guys on the farm. Hello, praise. Hello.
No, please, let's go ahead. We're
All right.
listening.
Okay, so I think this ends our session for today. Our point on checklist ends our session for today. So let's go back to our objectives and see. So these are our objectives that we set for ourselves for today. Are you sure that you can perform all the things on the objectives? Can you explain the scope of GlobalGAP certification? Can you mention the GlobalGAP normative documents? Can you distinguish between GlobalGAP general regulations and control points and compliance criteria? Do you really understand the way the checklist is organized? Okay, so I believe your answers are positive to these objectives we set. If not, please ask or seek any clarification from me. Are we all okay for now?
Hello, Charles.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I wanted to ask for something. Is it possible for us to get these presentations at the end of every training session so we have something to read up and follow up? Because at the pace you're going, taking notes is going to be impossible while listening.
All right.
And we can't wait at the end of the training to get the complete videos. So I think it would be better if you just send us these
presentations
at the end of each training session. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So starting from today, I'll send the presentations. I'll send it on the WhatsApp group and also by email. So if you are not on the WhatsApp group, please contact your management to add you to the group, and then we can share information from there.
And Charles, this Barasa, I also have a question to ask.
Okay, please go ahead.
Please allow me to take you back to the certification options.
All right.
And in this case, I'm dwelling on option 1.
Okay.
Did you say that QMS is just an option there, or it shouldn't be there at all regarding option 1?
Okay, so for option 1, we have 3 variations in option 1. Now, you have some individual producers. You have some individual producers that have multiple sites. So, for example, LATC can have, possibly in the future, LATC can have another production site, let's say in Lagos or in a different state. LATC can have about 3 or 4 production sites in Nigeria. When that happens, and the production sites are under the same entity which is seeking for GlobalGAP certification, LATC can decide to use QMS because all the production sites are under LATC. They are not independent entities. So when you are using that variation where you have multiple sites spread at different places, you can still go for option 1, but you can use a QMS for that instance. So the QMS is basically an internal rules and regulations based on GlobalGAP requirement, which governs all the sites under your control as a single entity.
Yeah, that's now I'm understanding that if we'll have a multi-site and the choice is option 1, we'll have to bring in a QMS. And I just wanted to inform you that I think the plan on the ground with LATC is that when we start export production, we might also have outgrowers. That's actually the plan at the moment.
Okay, so in that case, you can have option 1 without QMS for LATC production sites. But if you want to use outgrowers, the outgrowers cannot supply certified products to you without they themselves being certified. So in this case, LATC can support the outgrowers to obtain option 2 as a group. But that option 2 will be held in the name of that group, not in the name of LATC.
Come again? I've not got you.
Okay, what I'm saying is that
yes,
when LATC gets certified under option 1 without QMS, and later on LATC wishes to buy from or wishes to use smallholder producers, the smallholder producers must also be compliant with GlobalGAP requirements. But the LATC certification does not cover the smallholder producers. Why? Because GlobalGAP only certifies the product that is produced by you, not by another entity. So it means that you cannot claim ownership for the produce of the smallholder producers. You can claim ownership for the one that you produce by yourself. But if the smallholder producers are supposed to sell to you, or you are going to get produce from them, and you intend to sell those produce as GlobalGAP product, it means that the smallholder producers must also be certified. Then there are 2 ways in which the smallholder producers can obtain their certification. First of all, they can form an outgrower group which will be associated with LATC. So you can have LATC Outgrowers Association. It will be an independent entity from LATC, but they will be associated with LATC.
Yes, it will be.
Exactly. So it means that if you go for that angle, all smallholder groups you be buying from, they must join that association. And then that association will now go for option 2 certification to cover the members. That is one angle. Then the next angle will be LATC can decide not to have any hand in the smallholder association. They can just provide the necessary training for the farmers to form their own group, independent group, and that independent group will now go for their own certification under option 2. So when you want to deal with smallholder producers, these are two angles you can take it from. You can have a smallholder producer group that is associated with you, but an independent entity. And or you can have smallholder groups that are not associated with you, they are their own group, but you buy from them. I don't know if I'm clear here, Baraza.
Yes, I'm getting you right. Let me also repeat maybe what you have said so that you get if I got it well or not. Okay. Like option 1, you have said that LATC with a single production site can do without QMS, and that's the option 1.
Exactly.
But if a sister farm that probably is in Lagos, then those 2 farms have now the issue of joining in QMS. I mean, for the 2 farms, and there QMS are possible to be applied.
Yes, but if the 2 farms are under the control of LATC.
Yes, the 2 farms are under LATC.
Exactly.
Probably general manager, something like that.
Exactly. They can have their own independent management, but they are still under the LATC production company.
Now, let me give another scenario.
Okay.
One farm is in Nigeria, another farm is in Ghana, under LATC. What's that scenario like? Like, for example, I know a farm in Kenya that is also in Ghana. That's VegPro. What's the status like?
Okay, so when you look at the GlobalGAP general regulations, GlobalGAP does not allow that. Okay, GlobalGAP does not allow that a farm or a company in Kenya, their certificate can cover another company in a different country, whether they are using QMS or not.
Okay.
If any company has any reason to adopt that system, that company must write to GlobalGAP for permission. But under the circumstances or under the current general regulations, that is not allowed in GlobalGAP. It is country specific. Your production and everything must be in the same country.
Okay, thank you. Copied, Charles. Copied.
All right, great. Any other question or clarification? Okay. So if there is none, we will end our session. We have barely spent an hour, and so that we can close for you to go about your daily activities. So before I close, let's look at the next steps. Let's look at the next steps. So we have done up to this point. We have finished the first two themes, that is introduction to GlobalGAP, understanding the compliance requirement. Our next theme will be implementing GlobalGAP option 1. So this is where we are going to look at the details of the control points and compliance criteria. What must be done? How can you answer those questions in the control points? So this will start next Tuesday. So we will take some of the issues which are being requested or which are being demanded in the compliance criteria. We'll take some of them and look at how LATC can comply, or what are the requirements. What do they want you to do when we talk about things like self-assessment, infrastructure, traceability, and all of those things? What is GlobalGAP expecting you to do? We are going to look at this from next Tuesday. And then finally, we'll look at preparing for the GlobalGAP certification. So this one, maybe I'll discuss with your management later on the approach we are going to adopt. So this is going to be the practical side, where we are going to develop the actual documents and procedures. So I'll discuss with your management whether we can do it department by department, or we can do it as a collective training, or if there is any other approach that we have to adopt. But for the meantime, we'll start our session on implementation of option 1 from next Tuesday. So this is the next steps so far. Please, any question or clarification at this point? All right, then I'm done. Thank you so much for your time for the day. I thank the management, Ayodeji, Praise, Barasa, and all the management staff that have worked so hard to ensure that the training is taking place. I'm really happy about your seriousness and the effort you are putting in. And I've appropriately conveyed this impression I have to PolyACP yesterday, that your company is one of the very serious companies I have worked with, where in terms of implementing GlobalGAP requirements. So thank you so much for your commitment, and I hope that next Tuesday we will meet and continue. Okay, bye-bye.